Did you all hear that? I shall say it again. I would like to start this meeting by wishing you all a very happy new year. Thank you. Right, down to business. Welcome to this meeting of the Plans Committee of Charlton Borough Council on Thursday, the 9th of January 2025. This meeting is a continuation of the adjourned Plans Committee on the 12th of December 2024. Please could I ask everyone present to turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent to ensure that the meeting is distraction free, and will you do it now, please? Thank you. May I remind all those present that this meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, and that by attending the meeting, you are giving your consent to being filmed. A notice with further information has been provided in the public gallery. Under the Openness of Local Government Bodies regulations, people may also film or record this meeting, and this is outside the Council's control. For those watching the live stream, the Planning Officer presentation has been published on the website for those who wish to view it, and can be found on the agenda page for Plans Committee for the 12th of December 2024. And I would like now to welcome Mr. Stuart Evans, our legal advisor for the evening. Good evening, Mr. Evans. This meeting is a continuation of the Plans Committee on the 12th of December 2024, which was adjourned at the start of item 5. Planning application number P/2180/2, rear of 83 to 89 Loughborough Road, Hathorn. That meeting was adjourned due to late representations from the local highway authority and the government issuing a new national planning policy framework at lunchtime on the 12th of December 2024. Planning officers were therefore not in a position at that stage to explain the implication of these changes to the committee, and recommended that the meeting be adjourned to a later date. The committee then agreed to an adjournment. For transparency, I would like to clarify the position when the meeting was adjourned. 1, we had received a late request to speak from Mr. James Hamilton Rice, objector, and the committee voted to accept his request. We had received apologies from Councillor Infield and Councillor Snort, and Councillor Lawrence and Councillor Lowe acted as substitutes. Councillor Lawrence and Councillor Lowe are again with us this evening as substitutes. Ms. Dobson, have we had any further apologies for the meeting today?
I confirm we've not received any further apologies.
Thank you. The committee approved the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of November 2024. No questions under committee procedure 12.8 had been received. Councillor Monk declared an interest in application P/23/2180/2, as she had called in the application and would be speaking. She will be speaking tonight and will leave the committee and sit in the public gallery. Councillor Smidovitz disclosed that she knew the owner of KB Homes, the applicant for 4P/23/2180/2, but she had not sat on a committee with the owner for 8 years and did not feel there was a conflict of interest and therefore had an open mind. Tonight, are there any other declarations of interest members wish to make on this occasion? No, thank you. Thank you, and we will now move on with this meeting. And first of all, I am going to ask our planning officer, Mr. Worley, to call something to our attention. Mr. Worley, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As you just recounted there, part of the reason for the adjournment on December the 12th was the late receipt of highways comments and other matters as well, but that was part of it. We have received today a request from a gentleman who's objected at every stage of the application for a further adjournment, basically, to allow more time because he hasn't had the opportunity to address those comments in the time that's elapsed, just under a month, isn't it? So before we proceed, can we maybe do the dance again, follow the same routine, and first decide if you wish to proceed or you wish to allow more time for the gentleman to get to grips with the correspondence.
Right, members, we will have to vote on this. We have a request for a further adjournment to allow for a response from an objector to respond to the comments from the Highway Authority. Councillor Fryer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to know if there's clarification that if we do adjourn it again, does this bring the Borough Council and this committee into problems with non-determination? Because that can be held against us for non-determination due to time. Now this, I believe I'm right in saying, this plans application first was lodged in 2023, and we do have, we're supposed to get through applications, so I'm not sure how we stand. I'm sure our legal advisor will tell it. Is this coming against the council and this committee for non-determination?
Through you, Chair, clearly there is a risk of an appeal against non-determination in this kind of situation. I don't know whether Mr. Worley's got any further comments in relation to that.
Just to reiterate, we're already in that territory. And this is news to the applicant tonight as well, so by the way, so they would obviously want to consider their next steps, and that remains an option to them.
Yes,
Councillor Lopez.
I may come back. That's what I was considering, that the applicant, would the company have grounds to object if they had known about this, or is it just purely our decision and the risk is that it comes into the grounds of non-determination?
Through you, Chair, it's clearly a matter for you. It's a matter for committee tonight, plans committee tonight, as to whether you decide that it's inappropriate to have a further adjournment to allow one of the objectors additional time to actually respond to the additional highways comments.
Chair, and sorry to my fellow councillors, But this information came through in December that the objector is wanting to review and go into more, you know, be able to fully understand it. If we did adjourn it, if the committee decided yes, they would adjourn it again, would this then set a precedent for future cases that, or would it just be isolated? Because we have had it before that it sets a precedent. I haven't made up my mind yet. I'm waiting to hear what other people say, but it isn't as though the document in question has only just come out. It came out on the 11th of December or 12th of December when we adjourned it then. So I just think it's a bit of a concern at the moment, but I haven't made up my mind.
Through you, Chair, yes, the precedent point's an interesting point, Councillor Fryer, but on the basis I feel that every application is clearly considered on its merits. My arguments here would be that in relation to the precedent point, we'd keep it to this particular application. That would be my argument.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I totally agree, actually, with the precedents. I don't believe there should be a precedent set because everyone is individual. We treat everyone individually. I would have no problem with the further adjournment, Chair. Reading the extras report tonight, I think there's a lot of residents out there that are quite unhappy with this application and the way it's being dealt with. I think it's probably been dealt with quite correctly by officers at Charnwood. I'm a little bit concerned about the time, though. Am I right in saying that was in November, December? That the paperwork was released. So between December and now, he's not had time to read it and come back. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, you may remember, if you've got a good memory, that on the 12th we said firstly we were reporting something that had only been received on the 10th, and then there was something further we never got onto reporting that had just been received on the 11th. So I suppose the gentleman, it's both of those really, although only the most recent is presents the Highway Authority's final position. But yeah, the 11th, sorry, that's a long explanation. Yes, the 11th.
So that's 4 weeks, isn't it? Near enough. Am I right there? We read the reports quite quickly and can have feedback on them. So.
Oh yeah, my gut feeling is that we're kicking the can down the road a little bit with this. We need to tackle it and get an answer, get a resolution one way or the other. We're all wanting to get this resolved. I don't know how other councillors are feeling, but I'm not really one for kicking the can down the road time and time again. I think we should proceed.
I think this planning application has come before us in the past and been refused. So I think the officers have had a lot of discussion with the actual applicant. But when you look at the planning portal and look back on time, so I think this problem has been around for a long time. I think it's time we dealt with it.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to echo what Councillor Smidovic just said, really, I'll keep it brief. But if there's any risk of non-determination, and given that there has been a whole month to review the extra documents on this, I think we absolutely have to do it now. We shouldn't defer.
Right, colleagues, I think the simpler way forward now is to go to the vote. We have had a request for another adjournment. I am asking colleagues now to vote on that request. All those in favour of granting another adjournment, will you please raise your hands? All those in favour of those against granting another adjournment, would you raise your hands, please? And there are no abstentions. So therefore, we will not adjourn again, and I will continue with the meeting. Thank you for your help in all that matter. Right, we come now to item 5A, number P/23/2180/2, land to the rear of 83 to 89 Loughborough Road, Havant. Ms Liggins, I understand you are presenting, so Ms Liggins, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Before we start really with the presentation, there's been another late update that I need to give you a verbal update about. So in addition to the National Planning Policy Framework being published in December, on the 18th of December, the County Council published their revised online Leicestershire Highways Design Guide, which incorporates changes to the NPPF that had just been published. So including a vision-led approach and the prioritisation of active modes of travel to reflect the new guidance in the NPPF. The County Council will provide further revisions to the Highways Development Management chapter of the Highways Design Guide when the requirements of the vision-led approach and monitoring now sought by the NPPF are actually updated in revised PPG, planning policy, planning practice guidance, or the publication of emerging best practice. So the development management side, in terms of advising officers on highways matters, has not yet changed. So the publication doesn't therefore impact the existing assessment that the Highway Authority have made of this application tonight. And this has been confirmed by the Highway Authority today. So I'll carry on with the assessment. I apologise for the croaky voice, but I hope you'll bear with. And the intermittent coughing. So members' attention is drawn to the extras report from the 12th of December, which still stands, which included several issues which required officer attention following the publication of the original agenda for that meeting, and also a second extras report which addresses issues arising since the 12th of December, including additional neighbour correspondence and the publication of the replacement NPPF. So this isn't moving the slides on. Oh, there we go. Different button. So by way of background, some members may recall that this site was the subject of a previous planning application for outline planning permission under application reference P/20/2373. Members resolved at the meeting on the 29th of March 2021 to grant outline permission subject to the conclusion of a Section 106 agreement. When this agreement was unable to be finalised almost 2 years later, Plans Committee refused planning permission on the 17th of March 2023. So this is the application site, which is situated to the southwest of Loughborough Road and is currently agricultural land. To the northwest of the site is Brunsley Croft, which is a backland housing site. To the south, there's a further field between the site and the Garendon Avenue cul-de-sac of dwellings. The existing and proposed access to the land lies between 89 and 97 Loughborough Road, which both have garages flanking the track. So the conservation area is shown in green, and you can see that the application site lies wholly outside of it. The nearest listed building is hatched pink and just north of the proposed access, and this is the Anchor Inn public house, which is grade 2 listed. It's not working again. So this is an aerial photo of the site. Although the red line doesn't extend beyond the westernmost boundary of Brunsley Croft dwellings to the north, the site is approximately 3/4 of a hectare. You can see that the field is largely grass with trees and hedgerows around the perimeter. The land is outside the Havern limits to development and is within countryside. Although not apparent from the aerial photo, the land rises gently from Loughborough Road to the southwestern boundary. So the site is a housing allocation in the emerging Charnwood local plan. This slide shows the allocation in orange, and as you can see, the text states that we will support development on the eastern part of the site within the lighter orange coloured area on the image to the right, with that area of the lighter coloured area remaining undeveloped to provide a landscaping buffer to the fields beyond to the west. So the application site covers part of the allocation. The officer report explains how this retained area would provide not only ecological mitigation, but a soft edge to the development. These are photos of the application site. The top left is taken from within the existing access track looking east towards Loughborough Road. The top right photo is taken within the site and looking across the back of Loughborough Road dwellings and towards the white coloured gable of number 79 Loughborough Road in the distance. The bottom left is an image looking up at the site along the southern boundary. The bottom right photo is looking up the field towards the blue land area, which is outside the application site boundary, but which is where biodiversity enhancement and mitigation is to be provided. These are more photos. The top left is from the top of the site looking back towards Loughborough Road properties. The top right is looking along the northern boundary along the back of Brunsley Croft dwellings. The bottom left photo is looking across the site towards the rear of 9 and 10 Brunsley Croft, and the bottom right continues this view to the east. This slide shows the existing street views from Loughborough Road. The top left photo is looking southeast within the street, and you can just see a gateway to the right-hand side past the stone wall, which is where the site is accessed from presently. The bottom left photo shows this same gateway just past the telegraph pole and looks northwest. The large white building on the right-hand side is the Grade 2 listed Anchor Inn. The picture on the right shows the existing access, which is an unsurfaced track leading into the field. You can get a sense of how the land rises, and those on the visit on the 12th of December saw that the properties either side are also significantly elevated above road level. So the application is for full planning permission for the erection of 25 dwellings, utilising the existing point of access off Loughborough Road. The development is being brought forward in partnership with a social housing provider and is anticipated to deliver 100% affordable homes, although the policy requirement is that only 40% of these are required to be affordable units. This is an illustrated proposed site layout plan, and the development includes a mix of single-storey and two-storey dwellings as described in paragraph 3.2 of the agenda report. The development includes maisonettes designed as two-storey dwellings, semi-detached dwellings and 3 bungalows, and includes the surface water attenuation feature, landscaping and parking. So these are 3 of the 4 proposed street scenes. The bottom picture shows the dwellings which would be seen on first entering the site, with the roadway passing between. The top image is the street scene of the dwellings on the northern side of the new street, and which would back onto Brunsley Croft properties, and the middle image is opposite view of the street looking southeastwards. This is a plan of the proposed access details. The access would be 5 metres wide and would include visibility splays of 2.4 metres by 120 metres to the northwest and 2.4 metres by 138 metres to the southwest. Pedestrian visibility splays of 1 metre by 1 metre would be provided to both sides of the access. The local highway authority is satisfied that the technical details of the access meets its requirements, subject to the imposition of planning conditions, and these are included in the report as conditions 8, 10, 11, 12 and 14. This is a plan of the land to the west of the application site. That you remember, that's the light coloured orange in the site allocation, the undeveloped part, where biodiversity and landscaping mitigation is to be secured. This largely consists of improving the condition of grassland with seeding of a variety of grasses and wildflowers as annotated, and new tree planting. A management plan and its implementation are to be secured by condition 15 and tied into the legal agreement that's also proposed, with a fail-safe clause that if it doesn't achieve target condition within a prescribed time, off-site habitat units could be purchased. As you can see from the list, there are lots of matters to consider, so I hope you can bear with me. So in terms of the principle of development, there is an acknowledged policy conflict in that the site is within countryside as set out in the adopted policies, but it is a site that's allocated for housing in the emerging local plan. The weight to be given to the most relevant policies is set out in section 9.1 of the officer report, and when applying the tilted balance of policies under paragraph 11D of the MPPF, the proposal is considered to be acceptable in principle. So in terms of housing mix, the Council's Housing Development Officer has confirmed that the tenure and housing type mix is acceptable, and the legal agreement would secure not less than 40% as affordable homes. The assessment of landscape and visual impact can be found in section 9.3 of the report, with the conclusion that although there would be some effect on the character of the area through the introduction of built development, this harm can be mitigated through new landscaping. The design and layout of the scheme has seen several iterations as the agent has responded to opportunities to improve the development, such that the proposals before you this evening are considered to be providing good quality and affordable homes. Details of materials are required to be submitted by the recommended condition number 17. Open space is provided both on-site and off-site and secured through the legal agreement in accordance with policy CS15 of the core strategy and policy EV9 of the draft local plan. In terms of amenity, paragraph 9.64 assesses the relationship between the existing and proposed developments. The report also considers the amenity of future occupiers of the dwellings. Although some recommended standards are very modestly unmet, it is concluded that the amenity impacts to existing and future residents would be acceptable. In terms of noise, and as recommended by the Council's Environmental Protection Officer, condition number 16 seeks to secure an acoustic barrier alongside the proposed access road where it passes between numbers 89 and 97 Loughborough Road. In addition, the condition requires the developer to submit a glazing and ventilation scheme for the new homes to ensure internal noise levels are minimised. Excuse me. Heritage impacts are addressed in section 9.7 of the officer report and concludes that there would be no harm caused to the significance of either the conservation area or the anchor inn. Impact on existing trees is considered, and as all existing trees are to be retained and supplemented with new planting, and this is in combination with the proposed landscaping scheme, is acceptable to the Council's tree and landscape officers. So in terms of ecology and biodiversity, the Council has worked with the developer's ecologists to secure a landscape and ecological enhancement area to that blue land area west of the application site and within the applicant's control. This area would provide enhancement to the land and new trees to offset the biodiversity impact of the development. A management plan for the area is required by recommended condition 19. Members' attention is drawn to the first extras report, which included correspondence from the applicant relating to the additional need to include an addition half a unit of habitat mitigation off-site. In combination, it's considered that the proposed mitigation is acceptable, and this can be secured through condition 19 and the legal agreement. The impact on soil is set out in section 9.10 of the report and is self-explanatory, really. In terms of flood risk and drainage, the site lies within flood zone 1, and drainage information has been submitted and refined in accordance with comments of the lead local flood authority. The imposition of the conditions it recommended should ensure that the development is satisfactorily drained. Highways impacts are set out in section 9.12 of the report, and the proposed access arrangements have been the subject of extensive public comment. The local highway authority is satisfied that the proposed access, turning and parking arrangements as shown on the slides are acceptable and accord with the relevant part of the Leicestershire Highways Design Guide. A late response from the local highway authority means that the drawing numbers in conditions 8 and 14 required updating, and this was set out in issue 10 of the first extras report. So as far as contamination is concerned, the Council's Environmental Protection Officer is satisfied that provided the remediation measures as required by condition 4 are implemented in full, the amenity of future occupiers should be safeguarded. Section 9.14 of the report sets out what's proposed to be included within the planning agreement, and importantly, section 9.12.7 indicates why this does not include the requested County Council contributions to the Charnwood Transport Strategy. The developer contributions which are sought can be found within table at section 9.14.3. So the recommendation is that subject to, where did that go? That subject to the completion of the planning agreement in recommendation A, and according to the amended conditions in the first extras report, planning permission be granted subject to the imposition of the draft conditions and delegated powers for amendments to conditions and reasons to be given to the head of planning and growth in consultation with the chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms Liggins. We now come to speakers, and we have three. Mr James Hamilton Rice, who is an objector, Ms Marie Stacey of the Pegasus Planning Group, acting as agent, and Councillor Sarah Monk, who has called this application in. So do we have Mr James Hamilton Rice with us, please? You need to sit behind Mr. Councillor Matthews, who will move aside and switch your microphone on.
Hello.
Thank you. And you have 3 minutes. When your time is up,
Yep.
Ms Dobson will tell you. She will also warn you when you have a minute left. When you're ready, please, Mr. Hamilton Rice.
Okay, thank you for hearing my perspective. I'm obviously here on behalf of local residents that have quite tenaciously objected to this scheme, including myself, and I will just say that I've taken no pleasure in that. I'm not here for a battle that I didn't feel was worth fighting for. Ultimately, my house does border the land, and I'm not viewing this from a NIMBY perspective and a NIMBY perspective alone, although it does detrimentally impact me and my quality of life and my family's, but I think that it also will detrimentally impact the village itself in many ways, which I'll summarise again, which I have repeatedly. But first, before I go to that, I do want to raise the fact that I think that the principle of HA61, the allocation, was an oversight by Charnwood Borough Council, and I brought that to the attention of the man in charge of the project management office for looking at the land allocation in the emerging plan. But by the time I did, I hadn't objected to the original consultation, so it was too late. And I don't know how well that was publicised and to the people that it most greatly impacted in the neighbourhood, but clearly that's something that first and foremost I think needs bringing to the attention of the committee. This is not an objection to this particular development application, but it's the development application in principle as well. So personally, on behalf of local objectors, there are a number of elements that I think that this scheme is flawed. First and foremost, because of risk. The risk it introduces to an area that already has a number of problems: floods, traffic problems, and the potential access are the biggest ones. The potential access itself, as you've seen by the image, I don't think until you stand there, which I believe all of you have, that you quite can comprehend how narrow and tight that the access is. We're talking about two right angles at the two adjacent properties where it meets the carriageway boundary, and both of those boundary measures exceed 1.8 metres in height vertically, which... Oh, 1 minute to go. All right, okay. So I'm going to try and summarise this really quickly. I believe that it's going to be introducing risk where there is no risk now, or increase the risk beyond the level that should be acceptable. And I don't believe that the Local Highways Authority has adequately assessed that risk or been compelled to do so. There are a number of unique hazards at that junction, that including many local children who use the only pedestrian crossing in the centre of the village. The next nearest one is a good 250 metres away. Maybe in even excess of that. But as you've probably seen this week, that land drains the agricultural land to the west, down towards the Soar, and every single year during winter, my garden included, as my neighbours experience severe bogginess, flooding, and the carriageway does as well. If you introduce hard standing and tarmacking in that area where there is none now, it's going to detrimentally impact the drainage even further, which will detrimentally impact traffic, people's quality of life. And the cumulative impact of this development is detrimental to the point where I think it should be refused.
Time up, Miss. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Hamilton Rice, for your presentation. We now have Miss Marie Stacey of the Pegasus Planning Group.
Is that okay?
You have 3 minutes, Miss Stacey, when you're ready.
Good evening, Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Marie Stacey, and I am the planning consultant acting on behalf of the applicant KB Homes, who are a family-run house builder based in Leicestershire. The applicant welcomes the recommendation by our officer to approve the application subject to the suggested conditions and completion of a Section 106 agreement. The presumption of sustainable development is advocated by the National Planning Policy Framework, alongside the need to significantly boost the housing supply in sustainable locations in the borough. The scheme is for 100% affordable homes with a range of 1 to 4 bed dwellings, including 3 2-bed bungalows. The affordable housing delivery evidence in the Council's latest annual monitoring report shows that the Council are behind on their delivery of affordable housing. This scheme would therefore significantly contribute to the supply of affordable housing within the borough and provide much needed affordable homes. The site is an allocation within the emerging local plan, and the extent of the proposed built form accords with the visual guide contained within the policy for the emerging allocation by concentrating development to the east of the allocation site and providing landscape buffer to the west. The site is within walking and cycling distance of the centre of Haddon, which has a range of facilities and services. It is therefore in a sustainable location. The applicant has worked with your officer to ensure the proposals before you today are of a good design that minimises effects on neighbouring properties. Access to the site has been assessed by County Highways, and they have concluded that the development would not have unacceptable impacts on highway safety, subject to the conditions outlined within the officer's report. A net gain in biodiversity can be achieved on site and on land owned by the applicant to the west of the application site. The proposals are supported by a comprehensive package of Section 106 contributions towards improved education, libraries, health, waste and public open space, totalling in excess of £100,000. A scheme of 100% affordable family homes provides an opportunity to significantly boost the affordable housing supply within the borough. As outlined within the officer's report, there are significant benefits and material considerations associated with this development that outweigh the limited impacts identified. I would therefore urge members to accept the officer's recommendation to grant planning permission subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Stacey. And now, Councillor Monk, please. I think you know the drill, Councillor Monk, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking today to object to the planning application for 25 homes at Loughborough Road, Hathorn. This proposed development raises a number of concerns that could have a detrimental effect on the community, the local environment and the character of the village. I would like to outline the key issues I believe need careful consideration. Firstly, the development is set outside the defined limits to development as is within the countryside. Our local planning policies are specifically designed to protect the countryside and preserve the distinction between rural and built-up areas. This development proposes to extend the boundary into a rural area, which would undermine these policies. Allowing such expansion into the countryside risks eroding the natural beauty and agricultural value. Members will be aware that the Garendon Park SUE is merely metres away from this proposed development and provides more than sufficient housing allocation for the area. Secondly, the access to the site is unsuitable. Members will have seen on their site visit that the entrance to the proposed development is located in an area with poor visibility, creating a serious safety risk for both drivers and pedestrians. The site is also located close to a pelican crossing, which is frequently used by children and elderly residents. The combination of limited sightlines and high pedestrian traffic makes this access point particularly dangerous. Furthermore, the site is directly opposite a busy pub car park, which already experiences congestion at peak times. Adding more traffic to this already busy area would increase the risk of accidents and make it difficult for local residents to safely navigate the area. Thirdly, the proposed affordable housing mix does not align with the current housing in the village. The development includes a housing mix that is at odds with the existing homes in the community. The proposed housing development does not reflect the needs or character of the village. The development would create a segregated cluster of housing that is isolated from the rest of the village and could lead to a lack of integration within the existing community. Rather than blending into the existing landscape, this development risks creating a distinct and disconnected area that does not harmonise with the village's character. The scale of the development is disproportionate to the size of the village. Hathorn is a small village with just one local shop. This development would place undue strain on our already limited infrastructure. Further issue is hard surfacing on the site would increase surface water flooding. The extensive hard surfacing proposed would reduce the amount of land available to absorb rainfall. This is particularly concerning in an area with already limited drainage capacity, as it could lead to increased surface water flooding during heavy rainfall. In conclusion, I urge the committee to reject this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Monk. Ms Liggins, do you wish to reply to any or comment on any of the issues raised by the speakers, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to say that there's been mention of flooding and surface water drainage. At the moment, the land, due to gravity, does pull water downhill across the fields, and there's no management of that in place. The proposed development does include comprehensive surface water drainage management that can be secured and is recommended by the Lead Local Flood Authority to be conditioned. So the Lead Local Flood Authority is satisfied that the drainage proposed is adequate to meet the needs of the development. The highway access has been comprehensively assessed by the Highway Authority, who have visited the site and measured, and they are satisfied that pedestrian visibility and vehicular visibility displays can be achieved. The comment from Councillor Monk that the site is in the countryside, so there is some degree of policy conflict, but at the same time, it's an allocated housing site, and the council is required to provide a 5-year supply of housing, and often that includes developing previously developed land or development in the countryside in this case. So that needs to be balanced against the landscape harms that's set out in the officer report. In terms of the impact on local infrastructure and doctor surgeries and other facilities, the Section 106 agreement provides for contributions towards those things as set out in the table in the report, and is based on the requests made by the County Council and the Health Authority. So there are no technical reasons that the development can't proceed in officer's view.
Right, colleagues. I have Councillor Smidovitz, Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Corey Leslie, Councillor Matthews. Right, so I have Councillor Smidovitz, Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Corey Leslie, Councillor Matthews, and I will take them in that order. If any other councillors wish to speak, raise your hand and I will add them to the list. Councillor Smidovitz, please.
I do have some sympathy with residents, and particularly where we've got pedestrian crossings. But we're going into a centre, driving along that A6, going into the centre of Havant. So it'll be probably a 30-mile limit on the road. And are there any signs that sort of indicate before the actual pedestrian crossing that there's a sort of an extra warning? Is there anything like that in place, or could there be?
As far as I know, there's the usual street markings that are required by the Highway Authority, but that's an existing crossing. So I'm not sure that we could require any other signage drawing attention to a new access. And probably they might put something temporary like new road layout or something like that, but it's not really altering the road of Loughborough Road so much.
I think you've answered it in that last part, that there could be, before it takes place and is finally established, some warning sign that just sort of says new access or something that reminds people.
So in the photo, where the existing access gate is on the right-hand side in the top left, you've got the zigzaggy lines down the curb which indicate. Yeah.
I'm sorry, can't take comments from the gallery. I'm so sorry. Do you wish to come back, Councillor Smidovitz?
No, I think I've made the point.
Thank you. I'll come to Councillor Lawrence then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got some some points to make about highway access at some point in this discussion. But anyway, can I just ask the officer a very quick question about acoustic barriers? So in
Condition 16 is specifying that there must be an acoustic barrier put in place alongside the access road on both sides, as well as glazing, ventilation enhancements on the existing properties. I guess that means to reduce internal noise levels. I'm not really familiar with what such an acoustic barrier would look like or even constitute, and how much space it would take up of the actual roadway. You know, they're both, the entrance space. Is the officer able to clarify that for me?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yes. The previous application included a requirement for an acoustic barrier, so this would be a similar requirement. So it would be down the flanking sides of the access, down both sides, as you can see in the right-hand photo, down inside that wall and alongside the other boundary. And usually it would be a specially constructed timber fence that would absorb noise, basically, and that's the main properties and purpose of it.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Corey Lesley, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. So firstly, just to comment to start, I think the 100% affordable housing on this is great. I really like that. I think that's fantastic. And then secondly, and I appreciate, Ms. Liggins, you already did touch on this in your presentation, but just so I definitely know what I'm voting on. In terms of the biodiversity and the requirements we're making in the S106 agreement, it's initially said in the comments from Charmwood Biodiversity that there wasn't enough and that it suggested buying this extra 0.5% of the off-site mitigation to top us up, basically, and tip it over to the point where it's not a net loss and there is a slight net gain, or it's at least neutral. There's also talk in here of an orchard and a management plan. Will that also be stipulated in the S106? Because I can see on page 57 of the report, where we set out what's in recommendation A, it just says purchase of 0.5 habitat units from the habitat bank. So will management of that orchard also be stipulated as part of the agreement?
Yes, through you. The condition requires the management plan of that area that you can see on the slide there, so that, well, the aim is that the habitat value of that land improves to achieve the required off-site level that's required in terms of mitigation. But if that fails over the monitoring period, and within that reasonable time that will be set out in the management plan and in the 106 agreement, then there is a fail-safe where the applicant could provide off-site units completely and purchase habitat units through a habitat bank.
Okay, thank you. And how long is that monitoring period?
Usually it's 30 years.
Okay, that's pretty comprehensive. And did we get to the bottom of whether or not some of the habitats proposed for achieving net gain are within private gardens or not?
No, the private gardens proposed within the development don't contribute at all towards that, because obviously people can move in and remove vegetation or hard surface areas to their own tastes. So that private gardens are omitted from the biodiversity calculation.
Okay, that's great, thank you. And then on a slightly different note, on page 24 of the report, the Charnborough Council Urban Designer comments, there are 9 points in there that are considered unaddressed matters and a further 3 that are only partially addressed. Are we, again, this is from February last year, are we happy that they're all addressed and in place now? And if not, are we going to make sure they're addressed as part of the agreement?
They are matters that are still unaddressed, but we feel that the design quality of the final scheme and the final iteration of the plans is such that we would be struggling to refuse it on design grounds. Some of the matters that are commented on by the urban design officer have impacts in terms of privacy and other things. So if you're making windows bigger, for example, even though it benefits the occupiers, it doesn't benefit existing residents. So there's a balance to be struck between what is achieved and what isn't, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. I mean, the one that really sticks out to me, and it's a partially addressed matter, is recycling and waste storage. Are we satisfied that that's going to be sufficient?
All residents are provided with a green bin and with refuse bins, and it's usual that we can't enforce where those are pulled out on collection days or whether they're pulled back in at the end of a collection day. You know, it's up to householders where they store their bins, generally speaking, but to provide additional collection points or enclosures for bins on the front of properties would be perhaps not the most visually appropriate within the street scene. So we do think that most people would pull the bins around the back, and we don't think that we need to control that.
Okay, thank you.
I next have Councillor Matthews, but Councillor Denny also wishes to speak. Is there anyone you would like to come back? Anyone else, please? Councillor Fryer, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor O'Neill, thank you. Okay, very well then. Councillor Matthews, please.
Hi. Thank you very much, Chair. In terms of the actual properties themselves, I've got no problem with the actual properties themselves and where they would be situated. I don't believe they'd be detrimental to the village at all. However, my biggest problem that I see with this is the access to these properties. It doesn't, I mean, I went to have a look at this last night in the dark, and in the dark, it doesn't look very safe to me. We haven't heard anything about what sort of lighting is going to be in place. I could see a street light there that's completely engulfed by trees. That didn't do anything when I saw that. As has been mentioned, the wall there, 1.8 meters. It's at complete right angles. It doesn't feel very safe. It didn't feel very safe last night at all when I saw it. I would be very nervous coming in and out of that. If it was one or two properties that was being put at the back, then it would be, I think it would be not too much of a problem, because it would be more like a driveway, but it's not just a driveway. It's going to be a road with a number of properties that are there. Larger vehicles coming in and out, I think is going to be a problem. I sat and watched it for about 5-10 minutes, and the traffic after dark was huge. The number of children walking forwards and backwards, it's right opposite the pub as well. Are we going to have multiple people when the pub is full coming in and out of here, causing more problems? When we've got two cars, one trying to go one way up the drive, one trying to come one way down the drive, what sort of problems is that going to cause? Also, if there is lighting that's going to be installed further up the drive, how's that going to affect residents inside their properties? I've had new street lighting installed in my area, and I had to complain to the county council, who had to deactivate the street light because it was shining so brightly in my house. What's the situation with the lighting as well, and all that kind of thing? Also, delivery drivers, how are they going to treat this very, very tight, narrow access? It just does not feel safe to me.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Could we have a response, please? Mr. Waller, please.
Yeah, if I may take this one. Really give Deb the rest apart from anything else. The access will be 5 metres wide, so I think Councillor Matthews made a comment about cars waiting for otherwise coming in and out. You know, it'd be wide enough for cars to pass, even delivery vehicles. Maybe not 2 giant lorries, but chances of those appearing at the same time are pretty slim. comes back to a lot of, your other questions come back to a lot of what Sleggin said in introduction and the speakers raised about this access point and the sightlines and the involvement in the highways department in assessing those. And without rehearsing the whole story, again, they have concluded that the sightlines meet the standards and are adequate, left and right. So despite the sharpness, it's sharp, as you said, right angled at the moment. Once you emerge from that, the width of the pavement gives you your sightlines left and right and meets the required standard.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. Do you want to come back, Councillor Matthews?
I see what you're saying, where it sort of meets the required standard, but things aren't always black and white. To me, is it safe? If it doesn't feel safe, it's not safe. Regardless of what is said. That's my gut feeling. I mean, you don't put your hands in a fire because it's not safe. Even if someone says it's okay, you wouldn't do it.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. I come on now to Councillor Lenny, please.
Thank you. I'd like to ask some questions. The first one is about the acoustic barrier. How deep is it when it's installed? Because that's going to take up some of the footpath on both sides of the access road. Also, the runoff, if we go back to the picture that shows the design of the development with the pink road and whatnot. Oh, that's it, yeah. It defies belief because it's fairly good slope there, and the road is going down the centre and avoiding that suds altogether. So I think that the water runoff will mainly go straight down to the A6, which floods practically every time we have heavy rain, and will just be another risk. But the pavement bit I'm really concerned about, because the only acoustic boundary that we have near where I live has got poles that are about, 15 centimetres at least. And that's either side of the actual acoustic fencing. So do we know how much of the pavement that's going to take up? Because that'll be an additional risk to anybody trying to get a pram or a wheelchair or a mobility scooter down that access.
Through you, Chair, just to respond to Councillor Lenny. The details of the acoustic barrier are required to be submitted by condition, but as I mentioned earlier, usually that would just be a specially designed timber fence that doesn't include gaps, and has a double layer perhaps to absorb noise. I'm not sure the development that you were describing and how many vehicles that involves, or the quantum of development that seeks to mitigate. But this is a fairly small development, and we would ensure that the details of the acoustic barrier are acceptable to our environmental health team and consult on those details once they're received. In terms of the surface water runoff, there is an attenuation pond within the scheme, but clearly the road would include gullies, and that would capture runoff from the road and divert it into that attenuation pond. The surface water wouldn't necessarily just run down the street because it would be intercepted by gullies.
Councillor Fryer, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. There's been, I've listened to all the discussions, I've read through the reports a number of times and the presentations. A lot of the problems seem to be, or points raised, are to do with highways, and we'd have to have very strong reasons to go against highways thoughts and recommendations and reports to refuse on highways. as far as I see, my personal view. They've obviously gone into it, it's been measured. I don't think we can take into account again, these are my personal views, please understand, take into account, or I can't take into account, the fact that there's a busy pub opposite. That's not a planning reason to say you're not building houses because there's a pub opposite that's popular. We're looking at this development on this land and the housing it's going to supply. I was disappointed personally in some of the reports and complaints that their people are worried about the people that could be occupying these houses. We cannot give jurisdiction who should and should not live in a house. I mean, they may have been completely shocked when I moved into my house, but you've got to integrate people. And I think this is the type of property we need in this area. In the future, planning applications are going to get harder and harder, and we're going to have to make tough decisions. So therefore, my personal thing, I would like to recommend that we go with officer's recommendation and approve this application, subject to all the conditions, which there are many, to be looked at again. And we could, as a note, when we go in the approval, if it goes through, that we highlight as a note addition to highways that there are still some concerns over the highways report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer. So you are proposing that we accept officer's recommendation. I know I have other people wishing to speak. I will not yet go to the vote, but Councillor Corrilosa, you have your hand up.
Just going to second that, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. I come now to Councillor O'Neill and then back to Councillor Lawrence. Councillor O'Neill, please.
Thank you, Chair. Quite a lot of the points I wanted to raise were made by Councillor Matthews. I think there's a lot to be said for the housing mix. The biodiversity offset issues are very, very positive. I just wonder about the access to the site or not. It is on a busy road. There is a level crossing very close by. Having been to the site, I wondered whether or not having cars pulling into or coming out of that very, very narrow access, in my view, would be safe. Highway says it's okay. Well, I guess we have to accept their recommendation, I suppose. But I still, first time I've actually heard anybody say, Mr. Worley, that cars can pass one next to the other, because I very much got the impression up until now that it was one in and one out. So the fact that they can pass, can you confirm that? That's actually quite a positive thing in my mind. Other than that, there's a lot of positive things to say about it.
Yeah, I was just double checking. I got my facts right there. Yeah, it's a 5 metre wide road. So I was checking it wasn't 5.5 because my memory let me down.
So, do you wish to come back, Councillor O'Neill? Thank you. Councillor Smedovitz, you asked, no. I can come back to you.
Yes.
I'm going to take it in strict order because I've got a lot of people who wish to speak. So, okay, so Councillor Lawrence, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so we've heard from the answers Ms Liggins has given in relation to myself and Councillor Lenny about the acoustic barrier. So this is going to be a pretty substantial timber fence. So that's going to constrain the actual space available for the roadway and these two service strips that are actually referred to in the plan, which is the plan which is on slide 12. If we could see that, it's so that sort of I can't see very well what the colour is, but those strips, they are just service strips and they've got no curbs. They're just like something that a vehicle can drive over, and they probably would need to, the larger vehicles, if two vehicles, one's coming in, one's turning in, it seems to me anyway, and one's turning in and one's coming out, one of those vehicles is going to end up on the service strip. So it's in my mind, it's not a pavement. It's not even called a pavement. So I think we have to be careful here to call a spade a spade. That's not a pavement. It's a service strip with no proper curbing. Imagine this scenario. Even a pedestrian or a pedestrian with a buggy or a mobility scooter that's coming down the service strip might be just about wide enough for that. But then they come down to the bottom of that entrance way, and they could easily be confronted with a turning vehicle, a turning van, delivery van. It just seems to me that it might be a 5 metre wide roadway, but we're losing space all the time because they've got the acoustic barrier. If we now look at, please, at slide 9, where we've got the photograph of the entranceway, we've got that conifer hedge which is on the neighbour's land, so they've got no obligation to remove it. That seems to me, if you've got a service strip, if we can see where the telegraph pole is, just behind there is where the service strip will be, and that you're coming down there. And you can't see what traffic is coming until you're right on the junction. You're right on the junction where you've got your tiny little service strip, it seems to me, and you're coming to the bottom of there, and you have to look round the corner. And is there anything turning in? You're not going to see until you get there. So again, this, and that doesn't even take account of the acoustic barrier. We don't know how high that's going to be. I just feel that the highway access, the exit onto if this was a quiet village back road that the new development was giving access onto, okay, maybe we could cope with it. This is the A6. It's a completely different kettle of fish, and we're yards away from that Pelican Crossing, as has been said. We're quite rightly asked by the officers to weigh the planning policy compliance in the balance, and we might not always be totally comfortable with the outcome that's leading to in terms of the development in terms of planning policy. But here, to be honest, my feeling here is that I need to weigh the pedestrian and driver safety in the balance, and I think the way it's looking to me is the balance is certainly not in favour of pedestrians or even drivers on coming and going. So I really have those concerns, which I'm trying to weigh, like I say, weigh in the balance at the moment, Chair. Thank you.
I remember on the day being very surprised at how very much wider than it looks in the picture. And I had to imagine then the part of the wall being down. And I sort of looked at that and then weighed it up with a road I'm very familiar with that's equally quite narrow and what goes up and down it. And I was quite surprised that it was much wider than I actually thought at the first place. So I have to make that comment because it was a genuine surprise on the day. And I think that wall, if that wasn't there now, if we'd had a photograph with that part of the wall, because that'll have to come down, won't it, and be finished, we would get a better idea of the display.
You wish to come back, Councillor Matthews, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah. I'm really struggling to understand how this is safe. I asked about the street lighting situation, what sort of lighting is going to be going up the drive. You didn't come back on that. I'd be grateful if you could come back on that. But I've driven down this road 1,000 times. I used to live in Loughborough and nowadays live in Birstall. It just does, this access point just does not sit comfortably with me. And I'm very nervous having my name put on an accident that's totally avoidable. I feel I need to see more effort made with this access from a safety point of view, because as far as I'm concerned, the safety of the general public trumps anything that we decide in this room. I think I just want to go on record as stating that. But if you could come back to me with more detail about the lighting side of things, are there plans for any lighting to be going up the drive? If so, when, how, what ampage, and so forth? Thank you.
Well, if I can chip in there, the lighting provision stands with county, and Mr. Worley.
Well, it would be sometimes. So this is proposed to be an unadopted street, so they're not forced into providing lighting through the adoption process. That's what the chair was just alluding to, and there are no lighting plans shown in the plans. So from where we are tonight, the answer is no.
Can I just confirm, unadopted? So if the residents clubbed together and decided they wanted to put lighting in and pay for it themselves, would they be able to do so, of the property owners? Because unadopted roads are very complicated.
Well, yeah, they can be complicated, but there's thousands of them. Quick answer to your question is yes, but they need permission from you to do it. Collective you.
If I could just come back regarding unadopted roads. And there is a very large estate in my village that was built some years ago. And that was considered unadopted until the developers had finished and the county took it over. Am I right there? Whereby when it's during the construction, it's 360 houses and the roads were unadopted until it was virtually finished, and that had street lighting in them, and that was then taken over by county and highway. Is that what sometimes happens? We're not talking about a road, I presume we're not talking about a road where some people understand, or I may understand as unadopted, that it's not even tarmac. You know, to me that is, there's some in Loughborough that are unadopted, but I don't consider them really roads. So I just wonder if there was, am I on the wrong track completely?
Thanks, Councillor Barton. No, there's very many scenarios in this game, but the headline from which it all flows is that there's nothing requiring roads to be adopted. The way it works is if a developer wants a road to be adopted, it puts it forward to the Highways Authority, and then the Highways Authority flexes its muscle and says, we want you to reach certain standards if we're going to take it on. But not taking it on and it not being to adopt or standard is not an equivalent of being inadequate or unsafe. It's just not meeting their very high standards, which are very high to a large extent to keep the maintenance bill down rather than any matter of safety.
Councillor Lawrence, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add with that knowledge that this road, there's no guarantee or even possibly a high probability of this road being adopted, and that really just further calls into question the safety of pedestrians and road users in general using the access road, to my mind anyway.
Thank you for that, Councillor Lawrence, but we do have a proposal to adopt and we have a seconder. I think the way forward for us at the moment now is to go to the vote. So we have a proposal that is from Councillor Fryer, seconded by Councillor Corey Leslie, that we approve officer's recommendation. Can I have a show of hands, please? All those in favour of acceptance, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7.
All those against?
1, 2, 3, 4.
And I vote for acceptance.
So, 8-4, yes. Chair, yes, I've counted the vote as 8-4 approval.
So I hope you all heard that. The vote was 8-4 for approval of this, of officer's recommendation. So it is now carried and approved. Councillor Fryer.
Yes, my proposal was officer's recommendation, and I also asked if it be possible for a note to be added to whatever the decision was, that there had been concerns noted by the committee regarding the access. I think if I did say that, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a long and difficult application and discussion. What remains for us this evening is to go to item 6, list of applications determined under delegated powers, and it's pages of 65 and 74 of the agenda reports. Does anyone on the committee have any questions or comments about the applications under delegated powers list? No. Thank you. I therefore close the meeting at 6:25. Thank you once again. And I look forward to seeing you later this month. Again. Well, I look forward to seeing